Welcome to CS Week Marketplace webinar series. CS Week Marketplace offers fresh perspectives and strategies presented monthly by knowledge specialists from the Conference 39 Platinum and Gold sponsors. I'm Lisa Collins with CS Week, and I will be your moderator today, along with Ajaya from Tata Consultancy Services, who will facilitate our Q&A session. Mark your calendars for CS Week and Conference 40, which will be held April 25th to the 29th, 2016 at the Phoenix Convention Center, Phoenix, Arizona. Watch your email and our social media channels for registration information. This program will be recorded and available for playback along with our other archive presentations. You will find it under the Educational Venues Webinars third Tuesday and Thursday webinars link on our website later this afternoon. Attendees are encouraged to upload questions to the Q&A panel as they arise. However, all questions will be held until after the presentation for the Q&A segment. Please ensure that you address your questions to all panelists so that we may all see them. Today's session is Building Consumer Proximity Through Ubiquity, Business Cases for Interacting with Consumers in Their Preferred Channels. And at this point, I'd like to welcome Sumit and Ajaya.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. This is Ajaya here. I'm a utility solution partner with Tata Consultancy Services. My areas of focus are customer service and digital transformation. I'll be serving as a moderator today. Again, a warm welcome to all the participants, and we are delighted to have you on this webinar. Before we begin, I would like to give a quick introduction about who we are. We are Tata Consultancy Services. We provide business solutions, consulting to organizations across the globe. We have offices in 47 countries. TCS has a separate utilities practice which serves around 90 customers across the globe, and we have around 8,000 utilities-focused associates working with utilities across the globe. Today's topic has been a focus of discussion for many CIOs and utilities across the globe. Advent and proliferation of new age digital technologies is causing a paradigm shift in the way customer services of today and in the future will be managed and run, and ability to service customers on the channels of their preference is becoming more prudent for utilities, not only to stay relevant to their customers, but also help them engage and manage them better. To speak more on this topic and provide some significant insights that TCS has collected over the last few years, we have with us today Sumit Kumar. Sumit heads the strategy and innovation for utilities business unit at TCS. He has around 19 years of experience. He has been part of both business and IT, and has been involved in many strategic engagements both within TCS and other organizations. Before I hand it over to Sumit, I would encourage everyone to post their questions on the Q&A tab, and it would be my endeavor to have Sumit answer some of them and share his views. Sumit, all over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ajaya. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lisa, also. So, the webinar will basically have three parts. So, initially, we'll set the scene, so how the multi-channel across the industries as well as in utilities is creating the paradigm shift. Then we will look at what could be a strategic approach to answer this multi-channel question. And finally, we will look at a few of the experiences, real-life experiences, and how that strategy has been put into practice. That's the overall construct of the presentation. Yeah. So if we look at, so when we look at the need for the communications across the world, the whole industry is shifting to a completely new paradigm. Depending on what platform you are, so if you are on fan of Android, so you would be using Google Card. If you are on Windows, you are on Cortana, or if you are on Apple, you are on Siri. So you are used to a prosthetic memory in your mobile. That's the impact of channel on you. Now, the other industries, so this is in personal life. And when you look at the industries, the other industries are also setting the expectation of communication on you. So, if we look at a DHL, the way we can track and know the status of a parcel of a communication to me, it's I know for any moment where is my package, where is it going to, when it is going to get delivered. In utilities too, the communications importance is growing. And if we look at the J.D. Power survey and the J.D. Power scoring mechanism, we see right away there is a 13% importance out of 100% when it comes to communications. And that is what, when you look at the face of it, actually if you delve deeper, it is even more. So when you look at what really goes into measuring customer services, it's actually how or rather when you look at the payment part of it, it actually billing and the payments, you'll see 13% of the score actually depends on how easy you make it for the customer to make the payment, or for example, how easy you make it for the customer to know when the due date is. Similarly, with respect to pricing, so it's how well you explain the pricing to the customer is a very important score in the pricing part of it. Actually, it's if you put a weighted percentage with respect to the communications, the different parameters, you see approximately 20 to 22% of the customer experience is determined by the communication. So that when you compare with the customer services, where how courteous the call center agent is and how easily he explains anything with respect to customer services elements, which is only 6%, it's actually quite significant. So the importance which is happening across the industry, even when it comes to utilities, with respect to the importance of communication and multi-channel. And whenever we have to probably look at a strategy, we have to give that importance to the scoring which a J.D. Power, or for that matter any such customer experience quantitative scoring mechanisms look at. Now, there are quite a few phenomena happening both inside and outside the industry. Now, if we look at the utility in general, the relevance of a utility to the customer's life is definitely increasing, and with the new enablers like say electric vehicle, or renewable generation at home, or a storage, the power up, the power wall kind of thing which Tesla is launching, the energy's relevance and day-to-day relevance is going to increase. So that's one aspect of it. The other key aspect of it is the regulatory regime, the controlled day-ahead, power balancing market is definitely going to change at some point in time. It's going to be an transactive energy or some form or the other. And when we look at the whole of US and the capacity markets taking shape, we see that the reality of the power shifting to the individual, the power shifting to the distributed, it's for sure there. So the aspect of the regulatory regime going down, it's going to be more individual driven. The customer has to come into the center of things, and the importance of channels has to increase. So you believe it or not that if almost on an average user spends 14,000 minutes on a Facebook, while they spend 6 minutes interacting with a utility. Now, it was good when it was a utility would have been only communicated if there was a power outage or if there was a specific thing. So probably that was the time when the lesser a utility is contacted, the better it is. But it's not true anymore. With more and more energy services and the relevance of the utility going to increase, it's definitely a need on the other way around. So the plethora of channels, how much you take leverage out of it is a question, and what would be your channel strategy with respect to all the channels or a few of the channels is a question. But definitely, there has to be a very conscious strategy towards each of the channels, and then take the decision whether to go ahead with it, what services to take through that, and the other related stuff. Now, the other key angle to this, there is a very subtle impact with respect to the whole architecture of the enterprise, the way we do business. All these times, it was important to be efficient, and the system of records, which was defining how efficiently, how beautifully you do some work inside the organization, was all that important. But with the power shifting to the individuals and with the engagement of the individual becoming more and more important, there is a system of engagement. And the system of record, which was all this time ensuring the system of efficiency, we now need a system of effectiveness, which the system of engagement is going to provide on top of that. And that's where the importance of the content and the context of the engagement comes in. So it's no longer only the efficiency, it's the content and the context with which we are going to engage. And that's where the responsive enterprise emergence comes up. So it's not of, you will have to sense what the individual's need is and thereby respond. So there is a shift in the architecture which is going to happen. And mind you, it's not only an architectural shift. Along with it, there is a cultural shift which is needed also. Because it's not a responsive enterprise by architecture only. It's a responsive enterprise, inside out. And that would mean that, culturally also, it's not a regulatory-driven culture. It's a responsive culture in the organization. And if we look at last few years, so earlier it used to be engineering systems, and that was very important. Then it was the business case, which was the key thing which was thought of. Now almost everybody talks of only customer, and the centricity of the customer and the focus around the customer. And I'm sure and that's what our research points to also. It's going to be the culture, the responsive culture of the organization along with the customer, which is going to drive the change. And that's one of the very important phenomena which is going to underpin the success of multi-channel. Now, there is no doubt that the relevance of multi-channel and the utility strategy around multi-channel, how radical it is or how less it is, there is a significant importance one has to attach to that. The drivers within the industry, the drivers outside the industries, the architectural shift happening across an enterprise, and the behavioral shift happening with each of the customers. Now the big question is whether all the multi-channel dogmas or the principles are applicable for a utility. And that's where we'll have to look at. There are other industries who have been ahead on this, and there are quite a few things. I have just taken a few examples here, and those are representative examples. So one of the key things, adding more channels does not always ensure that your voice volume is going to go down, or you're going to increase a certain traffic on another channel. Actually, we had seen that adding more channels does add more volume in communication too. So it's not a straight equation. Similarly, if you look at a person shifting across channels, does not always mean that it's great and the customer's adoption around channels are very good. It can actually mean there could be some lack of experience, because if you see a bank, somebody starting with a transaction on say mobile, and it didn't give him the right experience, he shifts on to web. Now, in case of an utility, whether he's going to give that chance or not is another question. So, analysis that there is an adoption on mobile followed by a web does not always mean that the experience, there is more choice to customer and just customer is happy. It might be a fallout of from a channel to another channel. So, not only adding more channels is important; it's about the cross channel. Similarly, the other key consideration needs to be what is the service and what is the reaction on a channel. So somebody, if he is quitting on a channel, he would probably expect a quite faster response, while on another channel, the same responsiveness is not expected. So the volumes and the performance we are looking on a channel and the need of the service on that particular channel is to be looked at, and how responsive we have to be in utility, and in what kind of a service, what would be our responsive speed that needs to be decided to choose a channel strategy. Then a big question which comes up, is it web first? Is it mobile first already before web? And I would argue that in many cases the space on a mobile to have an app is limited, and he would rather have a lifestyle app there and would rather go through a search to a utility website. And so probably a responsive mobile site for an utility would be more meaningful than a mobile app. So what is the space a customer is going to give you on his mobile to let you have a mobile app which is going to be engaging? So and what would be the service really to get that stickiness? So it's not a pure play channel discussion. It's a discussion of customers' behavior. It's a discussion of the service you want to bring out on that particular channel, and it's also a discussion of how you orchestrate between channels. Now, having said this, the strategy which we often look at, and we had been using this effectively. If you look at the different bubbles across, there is certain things around utility and operations where there is a no compromise need from a utility, and then there are services and revenue related stuff. And on that too, there are certain functionalities which are minimalist, and there are certain functionalities which is in the rich boundary. Now, when we look at an example, outage communication or particularly an advice during an inclement weather is probably a minimalist, while we can think of electric vehicle as a as a moving load on the grid, and by actually changing the behavior of the consumer, we can improve our local marginal price and actually make a better revenue by or a better stickiness of a customer with respect to the services he takes, benefiting both the grid and also increasing my revenue. So it can be both extremes, but it's important to understand the bubbles of the use cases which would actually help the utility, the bubbles of the use cases, and what we are catering with on what channel. So the business coverage and the channel functionality together would determine how we would typically go about strategizing on a particular channel. Now, then comes probably the dimensions around the strategy. So we know now that the business objectives of reliability, operation, services, and revenue, if we talk of them as the broad ones, and the bubbles of the use cases we just talked about in the last chart, whether it's around customer empowerment or cross-selling and upselling, or it's just fulfilling the core services because there are certain services which have to be delivered, or the other few things. Now, the sets of the use cases which could be relevant could be linked to any of this. So it could mean a business objective meeting a customer particular need, and the use case is actually delivering that. And that would determine what would be the volume or the performance or the skills or the right channel for it. So effectively, the dimensions of the strategy here would be to link right from the business objective to the channel. And here are a few sets of use cases, and here are a few sets of channels only that would in the real life expand as the needs of the utility. So mapping the 6 dimensions as a need to the subsequent channel strategy would be an exercise which would determine how and what services on each channel, and what would be the volume and what would be the performance, and then probably the real architecture which would follow. I will take a few examples what we had been doing across the globe. Particularly, I have taken a little bit of non-US examples, expecting that most of the callers would be from US. So that's the reason why I took few non-US examples. And the examples are mainly to bring out the 4. We have taken only 4 different dominant strategies. So in each case, there were a different strategy which dominated the channel strategy, and this is only to elaborate the point how the diverse the channel strategy could be. I'll start with an example. So the 4 examples are one in the Australian market, where the churn is around 18%. So when you look at a close, a very concentrated Australia Victoria market, and with an 18% churn, mean it's typically on the floor, and each of the retailer is trying to out with the other retailer. So the upsell and the cross sell is a very important part of it. Then the other one, of course, in Scottish Water. So here, the difficult times which the Scottish weather brings in, and the pipe bursts, and a basic service of water, drinking water too, when it goes away, how difficult it is, and what would be a strategy around that. Then EDF, where it was mostly after a transformation, the costs of customer interaction went high. And then finally, this is Southern Water. We have just gone live, so it's not yet rolled out to the full population, so I have not named them yet. So it's a water company, very simple, and they want to just fulfill the basic services. So 4 different customer, different strategy, and probably in each utility there will be 2, 3 more bubbles, and the right strategy would be a balance of that. So the first example, I was talking about ABL. So here, the approach was primarily, to link it to a business objective, identify a value driver, and then define goals and outcomes to that, and following define a particular analytics incentive which could really help into that, leading into that business objective, and then measure with respect to a KPI metric that how this whole business objective is made. And I'll actually give you an example. For example, attract and retain was one of the key goals, and on that, how the the churn, the intervention on the churn, and the understanding of the churn and the risk assessment on the churn is understood through the customer's interaction on the channel. So there is a KPI and there is a measure, of course, delivered by the analytics. They're based on the analytics, which actually measures that particular business objective, and that underpins. That is one of the example of how what it underpins on the delivering the business objective through the particular channel. There is another significant thing. This was also an opportunity for the organization to actually consolidate the different diverse sites and the different diverse business users who were catering to the customers. So it was a consolidation of a platform, and through a systemic using a system as well as of course the governance process, the federation of the content and the management of the content, and the uniform experience of the customer, of the experience of the delivery of experience to the customer was done, as well as the cross-channel and the cross-business interaction of the customer understood and led with a particular parameter to improve the customer experience. So one straightaway example, and this is all business measured, understanding, and actually on the slide there is a mistake. The cost and the revenue, the arrows are pointing wrong direction. So actually the implementation, the measured benefit, there was an increase of revenue by $20 million, and this is what I'm talking of in terms of 1.5 years, and the cost reduced of 20%. The main advantage came in terms of customer switching. Even if a customer switches out from AGL, they actually have to spend money to help the switching process. So making that automated, there was a benefit in terms of reduction in cost. Similarly, by increasing the availability of the website, there were definitely lesser bounce rate, and it helped churning in, and there were certain advantages in terms of revenue increasing, other than cross-selling products and few others. So this is an example where again another important point is smart metering was mandated in Victoria earlier, and that provided a lot of powerful analytics to actually understand the customer's primary and secondary behavior. So this is one major usage of the business strategy to deliver experience customer and understand the upsell and the cross-sell, what it is possible. Few things which is probably more innovative and more relevant in that kind of a environment is creating a web API, a web application programming interface for other providers to write applications, which in turn helps an energy value ecosystem. So there are other providers who are providers of energy services, and they can leverage and add synergy into the AGL services, both benefits in the process, and this helps creating the energy value ecosystem. Very much like the green button, which is possible in US, but this is more financially, there is more imperatives with respect to the financials, and the possibilities are kind of more to create an energy value ecosystem. So this is one such example where the upsell and the cross-sell was a key thing which we drove. The next one is the Scottish Water. So this is the inclement weather, and as you see the numbers, the impact of using a multi-channel actually improved the customer experience to a great extent in this particular customer. There are and the start of multi-channel for Scottish Water was with addressing the customer needs. addressing the customer needs during the the Scottish winter. So the key thing was using a predictive intelligence to understand where the what is going to freeze to ice and going to expand and probably going to impact the pipes, and accordingly what would be the customers who would be getting impacted. So that was one part of it, and then crowdsourcing the the customer complaints through a mobility and a simple email and a web channel to understand what would be the the contextual information for the customer. So the mobile was used, of course, to actually give a contextual information to the customer based on his needs of maybe bottled water or his needs of other if he's in a more difficult situation, if he's without water and sewerage. So effectively the necessary action and the necessary information contextual to him was provided. The other angle to this was the quick the restoration, very much like what in the North America we do through mutual aid. So here, of course, there were temporary workers who could come in. Water is relatively easier to fix, so a lot of temporary workers who come in, and the way the collaboration happens with them and through the portal, it can actually transcend into the customer collaboration. So that was the other key thing. So there were pieces of solutions all put together for a multi-channel experience of the customer during the inclement weather of disaster. And if we look at pure North America, and actually we did a survey last year, and we found that almost 40% of the social communication of the total communication happens actually during inclement weather. Even in general it is a 25%, but we have seen in utilities where it has gone 40% of the total communication of the year has been very peaky and during that outage on the inclement weather times. So the other important point, the experience and the memory of that particular experience of a bad time lasts longer. So how your channel strategy works at that point in time would determine a great proximity to the customer over the life cycle of the customer's interaction. So our strategy for that particular time is important, and that need not looked at in the same angle as delivering other kinds of services over the core services or the upsell and the cross-sell services. I'll move on to the next example. This is EDF Energy. So EDF Energy actually implemented a new CIS system, and as you know, the CIS systems are often, the implementation of a CIS system is often a nightmare. So there is always several issues with the customer transformation which happens, and this was also they also had a lot of problems with respect to that. And immediately there was a very high shot in the call volumes, and the customer satisfaction survey was really going down. One important problem, and we were part of the journey, and we learned one important thing was that to serve a customer, say there is a billing and there is a billing related query or a customer service related query. To serve a customer, with the satisfaction, you needed two skills. So one was you have to, properly communicate with the customer, and all the soft qualities what would happen. And then there was the other skills which was needed to really actually analyze and understand and what could be a problem, and then probably draw from it and then plan to fix it, however you need to fix it. So that was one of the key, important point which was there. So purely the initial thought of bringing, and this we are talking actually 2.5. This is a long experience. This we are talking in terms of 2.5 years back. So the web chat channel was really brought in there, basically to do that skill, and reduce the cost. So the cost of communicating to the customer or redressing the complaints of the customer, a web chat was introduced as a channel. So where you can probably do away with the voice skills, and a good technical skill person could actually take care of the customer's problem. So that was one of the important reasons. And then, of course, a high-skilled resource could actually multitask, effectively, providing a solution to almost 2-3 customers together. And of course, there was a layering in skill, and it is actually transparent to the customer how the multitasking is happening. But effectively, what happens? The customer is served on a specific web chat channel to improve redress his problems, as well as the cost actually goes down. So you see the numbers on the slide. There were fantastic results. The Net Promoter Score actually increased by 55 points, and the CSAT, the customer satisfaction, and other things had a big positive improvement. But this is one part of the story. The other important part of the story which we learned out of this experience was that it is not only a way to reduce your cost, it was also a hop for the customer to shift channel. So before the customer completely went on to web services, we had seen how the web chat actually helps to move on to a web service, onto a self-service completely. So while a customer starts on a high-cost channel, he actually through a mechanism is shifted to web chat, which is primarily by advising him to get a better response on a web chat. And while he's on a web chat, he realizes that there could be several self-services also. So that whole learning of channel shift is been driven by how the reduction of the cost and a specific channel strategy work on that. So this is another part of the experience that the strategy was completely different. And then, of course, this particular utility and the debate which I was just talking about was whether a water utility in the UK and how much more he has to give on a channel, and what is the customer's expectation on a channel. And this was part of a CRM project. So it was looked at just like a CRM transformation. We need a natural extension to e-services on that, and nothing more, nothing less. A very basic strategy was implemented there. So effectively, it's how you really balance out. So in none of these particular utilities, it was this particular channel only or this particular strategy only. It was always a mix of strategy. And I have just given these examples to highlight that there would be strategies for different needs. And the right channel choice and the right channel strategy would be an actual balance of all of this as per the need of the utility, shifting the architecture as well as shifting the culture towards the right strategy. Ajay?
Yes. Thank you, Sumit, for the insightful presentation. I think I'm already starting getting a couple of questions on the Q&A part, but I just wanted to share my experience on this. One thing that I found very, very helpful was that it really does not mean that there is an enhanced customer experience if there is an increased number of channels that, more the number of channels, the better the customer experience is. So that's something I'll take back. So, Sumit, I have 2 questions, and I'll probably pose the first question for your consideration. What do you think would be the top consideration for a user experience design? Sumit? Sumit, if you're speaking on mute.
Oh yeah, thank you. Right, I was on mute actually. So, if you, it's very difficult to choose one specifically as a top user experience consideration. But I will, give an example and where, and often the simplest one is overlooked. And in our experience, we had seen, I'll take an example of AGL, where we looked at and we found the availability was the biggest one. They had a high bounce rate, and the experience of the customer with respect to the availability of the particular site to do a transaction was very, very important. And if you look at the backend system, so which has got which is typically a batch-based system. So you do transactions, but then there is a batch, and you can always catch up because the batch runs at night, and if it fails, then you can. So the downtime and the outage and everything is planned based on that batch, and then that impacts the customer experience because the customer would come and not be able to transaction because there is a batch and there is something, a maintenance is happening, which is driven by the enterprise's own goal. The customer is not in the mind. So what we did there was to provide a AGL-like website which would typically let the simpler transactions do and cache it and do it later, and so effectively increasing the availability of the website so that the customer can do most of the functions even when there is the outage in the enterprise system. So that itself was one of a big plus in the whole experience, and we felt that probably availability is the biggest one, which we often don't realize. Using a Google or any other such website, we just don't worry about availability because it's always there. But when it's utility, we often don't look at. So probably if you have to choose one, I would start with availability, the simplest one.
Yeah, and I understand this is scored very highly by from JD Power ratings as well, right? So that probably is another key point to consider as well, right, Sumit?
Yeah, that is true. That is absolutely true.
Okay, Sumit, the next question I have is, do you think the utilities need to benchmark their customer service offerings with other industries like retail or some high-tech companies like Apple or for that matter, even some rental companies like Avis or United or Delta? I mean, do you think they need to benchmark themselves with them while they select a technology or a platform to cater to the customer service needs?
Yeah, Ajay, I think that is a very good question, and the speculative future of the industry, particularly with all the enablement which is happening, and the emerging universe of emerging industrial paradigm, B2B2C, business to business to consumer. So it's the consumer which is at the center, and there is an annular ring of business around it, which can be anybody's. So anybody can provide any service. The industry boundaries are actually dissolving. So effectively, that is the annular layer of B around the consumer, and then of course there will be another B, another business layer, which would be actually providing services to this big business, which is providing customer services. So the more and more the outer B gets marginalized, so that there is more possibility of getting marginalized in the industry. So that's where the ambition of the utility is very important. Whether they would still want to be close to the customer and stay and have that major portion of the revenue, or be the marginalized business service provider. That would be a very important thing, consideration in whether you need to benchmark. Having said that, there is another small thing where the utilities does have an advantage, just like we talked about the storm or the disaster, where your primary recall is the utility. And if you give a good experience there, you are emotionally connected with the customer. Your credibility is definitely much more higher. So, it's not a losing battle for the utility on customer services. So your channel strategy and your strategy around the customer to actually get to that B2B2C gain is also, quite a possibility. Similarly, you have your engineers who would be actually, visiting the customer's home. So you have a field service and you are more connected with the customer. So that is a channel too. So how you actually use those channels together would also be a distinguishing feature. So net, there, I think it's holistic. So you definitely need to, compare if you are an ambitious utility, compare with others, and at the same time, be conscious of your advantages.
Sure. Thank you for that, Sumit. I have a question coming in from Raj Kanchalia. Is there a difference in outlook for customer experience in regulated versus deregulated utilities? Sumit.
Sure. So, I think part of it I kind of answered through the, through the presentation. And as you saw, the strategy of AGL and, in case of a regulated utility, AGL happened to be in the high churn Australia market. And there, of course, their strategy was, very much around the upsell and the cross-sell as we talked about. So the core services delivery was given. And, the other one, like the Southern Water, the water is a very, straight services, although they had planned certain affinity services around water conservation. But effectively, it was, more of a, regulated and, basic services to the consumer. So, definitely, in our experiences, we have perceived quite a bit of difference across the regulated and the regulated utilities.
Okay. So is it fair to sum up the need to be more customer focused is more in the deregulated market than in the regulated, but it is evening out?
Yeah, that is probably the important thing. The evening out portion is actually becoming important. There is, to start with, a more focus on cost to serve and the customer services portion, retaining and more innovative products. So all those things are more relevant probably for a deregulated industry, unbundled industry. But of course, we see that as evening out, actually.
Okay. So Sumit, I have another question coming up from Raj Mohan Pendyala. What technology or platforms were used in some of these clients? I think he's referring to some of the case studies that you talked about.
Right. So in each case, it was different. So I'll take an example of AGL, where it was probably more rich and more complex. So here, of course, the backend system was SAP, and initially we did a bit of thinking whether to use a hybrid, so whether to have the channels and the presentation and everything built on high availability Azure. So finally, we went on to a hybrid architecture. So SAP and the services were behind the firewall, and we had on Azure a content management platform in Site4 was used, and the SAP NetWeaver gateway, the OData gateway actually was used, and the Open OData protocol was used. There were a lot of other few important considerations in this, around the bridge which between the outside and the inside, which was to be built, the important part of the compression to deliver the experience, to deliver the performance. There were several compression technology was definitely used between the outside and the inside, to deliver data. The secure on and off-premise grid, which I just talked about. Of course, we use the Azure, access control for the access management, and and of course the protocols were around the RESTful web services were through the OData gateway. So these are some of the portions of the technology. If you look down into site core, then the workflow engine, the search engine, and the mobile device detector, and all those were primarily built on top of that. So this is one extreme of it. On the other one, the Southern Water example which I was talking about. So that actually was a plain Java build extending onto SAP. So the SAP business API services were wrapped around and were exposed, and the whole platform was built using plain Java.
Thank you for that, Sumit. That is all the kind of the questions we have had, Sumit. If there are any more questions, we have 4 more minutes to go, and I'd still be happy to take those questions. Okay. I think that is all we had, Sumit. Again, thank you for the insightful session. There were some very important points that you talked about, and I'm sure it would help utilities across the world to shape and to align their multi-channel requirements as per the needs of the customers. So, Lisa, I'm handing it over to you. There are no more questions on the panel. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sumit and Ajay. That is a very informational and educational session. We enjoyed it very much, and we're definitely glad that you were able to join us today to deliver this session. Wanted to just quickly point out that if you would like to know more information, there is a website address or email address there at the bottom of the screen. Also, if you have additional questions later or think of something else that you need to contact the speakers, please contact Amber Weens with the CS Week office. Her email address is aweens@csweek.org. And at this, we'd like to say thank you again to Tata Consultancy Services and all the attendees for joining us today.